Hello everyone, I'm Holly Agar, author of the novel Out of Touch. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about dealing with rejection on your writing journey. If you're serious about establishing yourself as a writer, then you're going to be experiencing your fair share of rejection along the way. In this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to deal with rejection so that you can move forward fearlessly with your project. First of all, it's important to note that the publishing industry is very subjective. One editor might absolutely love your work and offer to publish it, while another might flat out reject the same piece. This has happened to me a number of times. It makes sense because people have different tastes, and different life experiences inform their preferences. So remembering that the industry is subjective can certainly soften the blow. Secondly, it's a good idea to change your relationship with rejection. We associate the word rejection with negative connotations. Instead of seeing it as an assessment of your value and potential, see rejection instead as an inherent part of the writing process. I can't imagine an author who's not faced rejection on their way to publication. It feels nice sometimes to Google examples of famous authors who face rejection with their work. That's something I've done in the past and it's helped. I don't know, just seeing that someone else has gone through this makes me feel less like a reject. So even once you're a published author, it's important to know that you still face rejection. Why? Because again, the industry is super subjective. Sometimes it's the wider context which informs what a publisher is looking for. So my advice is to make friends with rejection instead of being worried about it, afraid of it, avoiding it. Thirdly, consider developing a mindfulness practice for yourself. Having your work considered for publication and being turned down can feel personal. Even if you tell yourself the industry is subjective, it still feels like a sting. It's okay to be sad and frustrated, but I've found that I've needed something more. I've needed something to quiet my mind and to make me feel empowered. And for me, that is developing a mindfulness practice. So what does that look like? I spend 15 minutes at the beginning of the day quieting my mind in meditation. So during this time, I might focus on a particular mantra. So I might tell myself everything always works out for me. Oftentimes I'm just focusing my attention on my breath, quieting my mind. But if I notice on days where I don't take the 15 minutes in the morning to meditate, I get a lot more aggravated throughout the day and I might slip into a lot more negative thinking. So it's really something I recommend that you do. And what you can do in the afternoon to remind yourself to keep centered is to take deep breaths in and out every now and then, and that way you're remembering, right? You're remembering, you're dedicated to yourself, you want to be kind to yourself, and you do that through your mindfulness practice. There are some apps that you can certainly use that help you with developing a mindfulness practice. I've used Headspace in the past, and I continue to use the Calm app. Both are wonderful guides in helping you with meditation. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that once you're also a published author, your work is really out there. So even if you're not facing rejection from a publisher, you're then potentially facing rejection from a number of readers who can freely write reviews. And that's great that they can freely write reviews. But if you're the kind of person who goes out and then reads the reviews that are out there, it might feel really daunting. And so developing a mindfulness practice is really important in keeping your sanity. Fourthly, I find that another way to soften the blow of rejection is to tell myself that I've just sent an early draft of my work. And this is really often the case. I remember when I had made the final 30 in the Penguin Random House's mentorship scheme. They were running a mentorship scheme called Right Now, which is fabulous. Essentially, it gives marginalized voices an opportunity to develop their work with an editor, with a Penguin House editor. and I made it to the final 30, but not the final 10. And I remember taking the rejection or the perceived rejection quite badly, in that I just sulked a lot, and I felt at the time like, oh, this is the end of the world. But once I'd calmed down, I hadn't looked at it for a few days. I left the work. I think it might have been actually more than a few days, like 1 or 2 weeks. When I returned to it, I could really see, yes, this was not quite ready. It's just an early draft of my work. I could feel the potential of what this work can be, which is very exciting. And you have to keep hold of that. Keep hold of the potential that you feel for your work, and it will help propel you forward. But I could tell that this was just an earlier draft. I was lucky enough at the time to receive feedback that I could use. But even if you don't receive feedback, I really do suggest that if a piece is, let's say, continuously rejected, the same piece, then maybe have another look at it with, an open mind, to try and figure out what's going on. And you can really, it's easier to see when you give your work to beta readers, let's say, someone outside of your immediate family who could read your work and give you some critical feedback for ways to improve it. One of the things that I really appreciate about writing and the process is that your work is almost constantly in a state of becoming. It's exciting because as new ideas come together, you're building a new world, a new sense of understanding. You're adding depth and layers to your work with every new draft. And as a result, you're growing as a writer and as a human being. So every time you are having to look at your work again, really consider this as an opportunity for you to grow, not only as a writer, but just as a person. Finally, be kind to yourself. Don't add to your frustration by saying, oh, I should be taking this rejection so much better than I am now. No, give yourself the time to go through the motions, to go through whatever is coming up, and then do something completely different as a distraction. Go to the cinema, go see a friend, and then return to the project when it doesn't feel so raw. So today I've given you a few strategies that I use when dealing with rejection. And as I've said through this video, I've dealt with my fair share. We learn from rejection not only by looking at our work more closely, but by developing a sense of resilience, which is so important if you do want to continue writing, and you're considering pursuing it as a career. I'd love to hear about some of the strategies that you are using to deal with rejection. So thank you for joining me, and as always, be kind to yourselves.